the calm before the storm. He is a narco-terrorist, a ruthless figure, one of the biggest drug traffickers in the world, flooding America with cocaine as part of a broader conspiracy. His operations are more than just drugs. They're part of a far-reaching plot designed to dismantle society from within. Cocaine, heroin, and other substances aren't just commodities. Each shipment brings with it a wave of human suffering. Along with the drugs, there's human trafficking, weapons smuggling, and the rise of violent gangs. It's a multifaceted assault on America's values, security, and future. At 5:12 a.m., on an otherwise quiet morning in San Francisco, the federal authorities struck. The raid was swift, planned, and intense, coordinated between the DEA, FBI, ICE, and local partners. Beneath the surface of a seemingly normal suburban home, a nightmare was hidden: 22 kilograms of cocaine stashed in the walls of a judge's house. But this wasn't just about drugs, this was the betrayal of justice itself. A federal judge, Jiang Ming Huang, a man who held the power to determine the fate of countless lives, had become a key player in a global trafficking operation. He was trusted with the law, yet he had turned it into a shield to protect his criminal empire. Beneath his polished robes, he had built a network of fear, corruption, and violence. At the heart of the raid, agents found more than just drugs. They uncovered the hidden remnants of a human trafficking operation: 3 terrified young women locked away in a hidden room, chained and silenced. At the same moment, Huang, a man who had wielded legal power with impunity, was arrested at a casino, revealing the depth of the deception. For years, he had manipulated the system, erasing evidence, obstructing investigations, and protecting his network of exploitation. Hundreds of young women, many aged between 16 and 22, had been lured into his web. They were promised modeling jobs and easy money. But what they received was a nightmare. Their personal information and explicit photos were used to trap them. They were controlled with threats to expose them and violence against their families. Once captured, they were sold again and again, forced into servitude, beaten into submission, and silenced through fear. Some took their own lives rather than face another day in their prison. For years, Huang's position as a judge allowed him to avoid suspicion and shield the operation from investigation. Complaints went nowhere. Evidence vanished. Witnesses were discredited or intimidated into silence. Police forces who got too close were thwarted. This wasn't a series of isolated failures, it was a deliberate, calculated system designed to thrive behind a mask of legal authority. As a judge, Huang had the power to silence those who sought to expose him, creating an impenetrable wall of corruption. His network wasn't just about selling drugs, it was about creating a factory of human suffering. Using deceptive online ads and promises of quick wealth, Huang lured young women into his trap. They were manipulated, controlled, and sold into the darkest corners of human trafficking. And when the system failed to act, when the law itself was compromised, those who tried to escape were hunted down. The enforcers Huang imported from abroad were tasked with eliminating witnesses, erasing evidence, and keeping the operation intact. Deaths were staged as overdoses or accidents, leaving a trail of bodies and broken lives. And yet, despite the brutality, it all survived because the law turned a blind eye. The investigation continues, but the full scope of Huang's operation, the breadth of his deception, and the scale of the human tragedy remains staggering. If this was possible under the nose of the judicial system, how many other dark secrets have been buried out of sight? It's time for the truth to be exposed, for the silence to be broken, and for those who thought they could hide behind power to face justice. Complaints were buried, patrols redirected, paperwork stalled on command. The system didn't fail, it was taken over. What began as a trafficking investigation soon escalated into a national security threat, revealing a criminal machine embedded deep inside the justice system. This was no longer just about drugs. It was about the collapse of a legal structure that had allowed corruption to thrive unchecked. It was a covert operation of immense scale, one where the lines between law enforcement and criminals blurred beyond recognition. As the final pieces of evidence clicked into place, Federal Command made their move. Operation Broken Oath went live at 4:30 a.m. Federal agents, nearly 2,000 of them, swarmed across San Francisco while the city slept, completely unaware. FBI, ICE, DEA, ATF, DHS, JTF task forces converged from every direction. Helicopters cut through coastal fog, drones hovered silently above rooftops, and tactical SUVs sealed off entire blocks without a single siren. The mission was simple and precise: dismantle the network's core before it could scatter. The first breach took place at a waterfront warehouse, where armed enforcers tried to escape. Flashbangs detonated, gunfire echoed, and agents overwhelmed the positions. Within minutes, suspects were on the ground, zip-tied, faces pressed to cold cement. In the warehouse, pallets of narcotics stacked behind false walls were seized, along with fentanyl presses, counterfeit pill molds, and chemical drums capable of poisoning entire neighborhoods. Simultaneously, teams hit safe houses across Chinatown and the Mission District. Some locations surrendered instantly, while others fought back. In one apartment block, an armed cell attempted to burn documents and phones before agents breached through balconies and stairwells. K-9 units tracked suspects through alleyways, while thermal imaging revealed hidden runners between walls and crawl spaces. Resistance peaked at a hillside compound, where enforcers fortified a room and opened fire through reinforced doors. Negotiators worked to get the suspects to surrender, but when the door finally fell, silence followed. Another critical node of the operation collapsed. By sunrise, the scope of the takedown became undeniable. Multiple command posts neutralized, hundreds arrested, tons of drugs seized, firearms recovered, many with obliterated serial numbers, and ledgers recovered detailing payments to officials, schedules for shipments, and precise instructions written in clean, deliberate handwriting. The discovery of one chilling note that repeated across files sent a shiver down the spines of analysts. Clearance guaranteed. As press helicopters circled overhead, the city began to wake up, greeted by roadblocks and flashing lights outside government buildings. Names surfaced, officials were placed on leave, and assets were frozen. The shield protecting the network shattered in mere hours. Operation Broken Oath didn't just dismantle a cartel, it ripped apart the very illusion that power, once corrupted, could remain hidden forever. What followed in the investigation was a deeper unraveling of how the network operated under the protection of the very system it had corrupted. This was no loose circle of criminals. It was Hongqi, a disciplined organization built to traffic not just drugs, but people and fear with military-like precision. Jiang Minghuang was not some distant financier, he was the central node, the key decision-maker, approving shipments, assigning protection, and resolving disputes with a judge's signature. The muscle for this operation came from abroad. Federal records documented hundreds of recruits brought into the U.S. Illegally, men with violent backgrounds, no education, and no future. These recruits were selected precisely because they had nothing to lose. Once inside, they were placed into cells where control was maintained by beatings and constant threats. Silence was enforced not by persuasion, but by terror. The network thrived on fear and money. Profits from trafficking and forced prostitution were funneled through casinos, converted into chips, then back into clean cash. Larger sums were routed through intermediaries and Chinese banking channels, disappearing across borders before auditors could catch a trace. In a single year, tens of millions of dollars moved through these networks too fast, too clean, and too protected to be accidental. Protection came from within the state itself. Investigators confirmed that 39 police officers were on the payroll, receiving regular payments to delay responses, redirect patrols, and provide advanced warnings. At the top of this corrupt pyramid was the county sheriff, receiving $42,000 per month as a standing fee to keep trafficking corridors open and prevent any scrutiny. This wasn't bribery as temptation, it was bribery as a salary. The alliance with the Sinaloa cartel turned Hongqi from a regional predator into a national threat. Jiang Minghuang's network specialized in fentanyl distribution, moving deadly products into dense urban corridors where demand was high and detection was minimal. Pills were pressed to mimic legitimate medications, and powder was mixed with heroin to maximize addiction and profits. What shocked investigators most was the scale of protection. Evidence surfaced and vanished, reports stalled, warrants expired, witnesses were discredited. The system did not malfunction, it complied. Huang's judge's robe wasn't just cover, it was clearance. By the time the full map of this operation was revealed, one truth was undeniable. Hongqi's network thrived because law enforcement was fractured from within. This wasn't just a gang hiding from justice. It was a gang feeding off the very system that was supposed to protect citizens, until Operation Broken Oath severed the lifelines and exposed how deeply the rot had spread within the very institutions meant to uphold the law. As investigators dismantled the organization's leadership, a darker truth was revealed, one that would continue to haunt the justice system for years to come. The truth came into sharp focus. Halong Hui was not built around prostitution or extortion, they were mere revenue streams. The core weapon of the operation was fentanyl. Federal analysts confirmed that Jiang Ming Huang's network specialized in this high-potency synthetic opioid, moving it with deadly precision into the heart of San Francisco. Fentanyl was chosen for one simple reason: efficiency. A quantity smaller than a grain of rice can kill. A few kilograms could wipe out entire neighborhoods. The margins were brutal, and the body count was accepted as collateral. The supply chain traced back to Chinese origin precursors, funneled through intermediaries, and combined with distribution channels linked to the Sinaloa cartel. Once inside the United States, the fentanyl was transformed to evade detection. Some shipments were pressed into counterfeit pills, designed to look like legitimate painkillers or anxiety medications. Others were processed into powder, quietly mixed with heroin, ensuring that users never knew what they were taking until it was too late. Dense, immigrant-heavy communities were deliberately targeted areas with limited trust in authorities, crowded housing, and anonymity. Chinatown wasn't chosen by accident. It offered the perfect cover: cash-based businesses, constant movement of people, and a population that often went unnoticed. As the drugs flowed, deaths followed. From 2024 to the present, San Francisco saw 896 overdose deaths tied to fentanyl. Emergency rooms were overwhelmed, and first responders carried naloxone as standard equipment, sometimes using it multiple times on the same person in one night. Many never made it to the hospital. Some collapsed in bathrooms, others died alone in apartments, misclassified as accidents until the patterns became undeniable. Violence surged alongside addiction. Turf disputes exploded. 125 gang-related shootings were linked to distribution zones controlled by the network, and 211 armed robberies followed as dependency spiraled into desperation. Entire blocks shifted from neighborhoods to danger zones, often overnight. What made fentanyl uniquely lethal wasn't just its potency, it was its invisibility. Users thought they were buying something familiar. Families believed their loved ones were taking prescribed medication, only to be shattered by the sirens of emergency responders. Investigators quickly realized that this wasn't reckless trafficking, it was calculated saturation. The network flooded the market, collapsed resistance, and replaced users faster than graves could be filled, all while operating under a shield of protection that lasted until Operation Broken Oath shattered it. When the seizures were counted, agents understood the scale. The drugs removed during the raids represented millions of lethal doses, lives not yet lost, futures interrupted. Fentanyl wasn't just a drug in this case, it was a silent weapon, deployed with cold efficiency until the system that protected it finally broke. As the raids settled and evidence rooms filled, investigators turned their attention to the most dangerous layer of the operation: the protection network. What they uncovered was not occasional bribery or isolated misconduct, it was the systematic conversion of authority into payroll. Financial ledgers, burner phones, and encrypted chats confirmed that 39 police officers across multiple precincts were regularly receiving payments. The amounts varied, but the purpose was clear: delayed responses, redirected patrols, advanced warnings before inspections, and silence when victims tried to report abuse. Calls were downgraded. Reports were misfiled. The most valuable resource in law enforcement time was intentionally wasted. At the center of this shield was the county sheriff. Bank records revealed a consistent transfer of $42,000 every month, disguised as consulting income. In return, internal affairs complaints were stalled, orders were adjusted, and investigations were quashed before they could reach a warrant. This wasn't influence, it was insurance, paid on time. The network's reach extended beyond uniforms. City clerks expedited permits. Building inspectors ignored violations. Health and licensing complaints vanished. On paper, everything was compliant. In reality, the city's very processes were clearing paths for crime. When victims tried to speak out, officers, already briefed on the network's interests, arrived not to protect, but to intimidate. Witnesses were discredited, their credibility attacked, and immigration fears were quietly amplified to pressure them into silence. Many withdrew, others simply disappeared from the system. Investigators later linked several missed follow-ups to the same officers who appeared regularly in the payment schedules. Over the years, the damage was cumulative. Trust eroded, block by block. Residents stopped calling for help. Families told their children to stay silent. Community leaders who dared ask too many questions were threatened. Violence flourished where accountability collapsed. The message spread quickly. Reporting only made things worse. When the list of paid officials was exposed by Operation Broken Oath, the shockwaves were immediate. Officers were placed on leave, their badges and service weapons confiscated. The sheriff's office issued a statement, then another, each more restrained than the last. Emergency sessions were held behind closed doors. Union representatives distanced themselves. City Hall froze contracts and launched audits that reached back years. Resistance also surfaced. Some accused federal agencies of overreach, questioning the timing and framing the evidence as misunderstandings or administrative errors. But the records were clear. Timestamps, amounts, and the roots of corruption were documented. Investigators made one thing clear in briefings. This network didn't survive because it was clever. It survived because people sworn to stop it were paid to protect it. The system didn't just fail the victims, it actively worked against them. By the end of the week, prosecutors prepared charges that went beyond drugs and trafficking. They targeted breach of oath, conspiracy, and corruption, and those who were complicit in turning a blind eye to a criminal empire that had thrived in plain sight. Operation Broken Oath was more than just a takedown of a cartel, it was a battle for the soul of justice itself. This operation was designed not only to dismantle a criminal enterprise, but to reset the critical boundary between power and accountability. The lesson was stark. When power is bought, justice becomes optional. And when justice becomes optional, entire communities bear the cost, until exposure forces the reckoning that no one wanted, but everyone needed. As the raids unfolded and evidence filled the rooms, investigators began to focus on the most dangerous layer of the case: the protection network. What they uncovered wasn't isolated misconduct or occasional bribery, it was systemic corruption. Financial ledgers, burner phones, and encrypted messages revealed that 39 police officers across multiple precincts were on the payroll, receiving regular payments to undermine the very system they were sworn to protect. The amounts varied, but the purpose was consistent: delayed responses, redirected patrols, advanced warnings before inspections, and silence when victims attempted to report abuse. Calls were downgraded, reports were misfiled. Time, the most valuable resource in law enforcement, was intentionally wasted. At the center of this web stood the county sheriff. Bank records showed a steady flow of $42,000 every month, funneled through intermediaries and disguised as consulting fees. In exchange, investigations stalled, tasking orders were altered, and momentum was lost before cases could even reach the point of issuing a warrant. This wasn't influence, it was insurance. The corruption didn't stop with uniforms. City clerks expedited permits, building inspectors turned a blind eye to violations, and health complaints were ignored once logged. On paper, everything looked compliant. In reality, the city's own processes were clearing the way for crime to flourish. Witness intimidation followed a well-known pattern. When victims attempted to speak out, officers briefed on the network's operations arrived first, not to protect, but to dissuade. Statements were aggressively challenged, credibility was attacked, and fears of immigration status were amplified. Many victims withdrew, and others simply disappeared from the system entirely. Investigators later traced several missed follow-ups to the same officers appearing repeatedly in the payment logs. Over the years, the damage accumulated. Trust eroded in neighborhoods, block by block. Residents stopped reaching out for help, families warned their children to remain silent, and community leaders faced threats for asking too many questions. Where accountability collapsed, violence and fear flourished. The message spread quickly, reporting only made things worse. When Broken Oath exposed the list of paid officials, the shock was immediate. Officers were placed on leave, badges and service weapons were confiscated, and statements from the sheriff's office became increasingly restrained. Behind closed doors, emergency sessions were held, and city officials began distancing themselves from the scandal. City Hall froze contracts, launched audits, and tried to put distance between the corruption and their own offices. But despite some resistance, there was no hiding the truth. Some critics questioned the timing of the operation or accused federal agencies of overreach, while others tried to frame the evidence as misunderstandings or administrative errors. But the records were irrefutable timestamps, amounts, and clear patterns confirmed the depth of the corruption. Investigators made it clear in briefings. This network didn't survive because it was clever. It survived because it was actively protected by people sworn to uphold the law. The system didn't just fail the victims, it actively worked against them. By the end of the week, prosecutors were preparing charges that went far beyond drug trafficking and human exploitation. They targeted breach of oath, conspiracy, obstruction, and racketeering. The goal wasn't just to dismantle a cartel, it was to reset the boundaries between authority and accountability. The truth was unavoidable. When power is bought, justice becomes a choice. And when justice becomes a choice, entire communities suffer until the system is forced to confront its failure. What this case ultimately revealed was not just the scale of a criminal empire, but the dangerous illusion that power, once corrupted, could remain hidden forever. For years, Jiang Minghuang's network survived, not because it was invisible, but because it was shielded. Shielded by silence, shielded by fear, shielded by misused authority. But that shield broke. It broke because federal agents refused to accept the false narrative handed to them. It broke because investigators followed the numbers that didn't make sense, listened to patterns others dismissed, and relentlessly pursued the truth. When the evidence finally aligned, American law enforcement did what it was designed to do: act decisively and without compromise. Operation Broken Oath wasn't about spectacle, it was about restoring the essential boundaries between power and accountability. It was about proving that no title, no badge, no robe places anyone above the law. When the system was challenged from within, it was professionals, FBI agents, ICE officers, DEA task forces, and federal prosecutors who stepped up, recognizing the high stakes involved, the lives of communities, the integrity of justice, and the very credibility of the legal system. This case serves as a stark warning. Corruption doesn't announce itself, it embeds, it normalizes, and it thrives on inattention. The costs are not only measured in money or drug seizures, but in the trust lost and the lives destroyed. Yet, this story doesn't end with outrage, it ends with proof. Proof that when institutions are challenged, they can still respond. Proof that when the law is betrayed, it can still defend itself. And proof that even when corruption runs deep, the United States retains something its enemies often underestimate: the courage and professionalism to expose it, confront it, and shut it down. Justice didn't arrive quietly, but it did arrive.